And hi, Eli, and thank you for your time and welcome to this new episode of the Lightleaders, which is a Q&A with the community. So thank you also, Dylan, Zizi, and Zoe for being here. And to give context, there is already an interview I've done with Eli and another episode also where we had you with Shane and Professor Spira. That was really amazing. So anyone who's interested in that can listen to it. And here, the idea of this community Q&A is that other people can ask questions, and all of us are pretty much on the raw food or at least healthy eating journey. We're pretty versed into truth seeking overall and into spirituality also. So I believe we can go deep in this hour. So thanks, guys. And before we get started with Q&As, I know it's always a really hard question. People can refer to other interviews or podcasts if they want to dive. But if you were to do like a 4 or 5 minute intro, Eli, about like your food journey, but you can also open up other doors. What would it be?
I guess if I had to put it in a nutshell, over time, through interest in first physical activity, but then later on going deeper into physicality and health and wellness and diet and whatnot. These are all interests that started to accrue as I got more experience in life in general. So to encapsulate what my interest is kind of the esoteric philosophy of life. I'll say that, right? And uncovering the true principles of nature that govern our mentality, that govern the dynamics of spiritual functioning, govern the dynamics of physical functioning, and just trying to ascertain the laws that are responsible for taking our lives in the best places that we want them to go. And that's essentially it in a nutshell. So the deeper spiritual science that undergirds health and wellness, right? And I've tried to fuse spirituality, not fuse, because they're connected regardless of what our personal opinions on that are. But I've just tried to uncover the connection between your spirituality and your physicality, your diet, all the things that we usually talk about in the nutrition world, right? And health world. Yeah, so it's that harmonizing of higher esoteric principles with common everyday health and eating and diet principles that I found I was getting very interested in.
Well, I'm happy to start with the first question because I'm really curious when I look at you. I'm on a food journey where I feel everything's going well. One thing where I'm more questioning is the strengths. So has your pure strengths been on that more raw food journey that I think you've done for like 7 or 8 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in terms of strength, the thing about strength is it starts to be a lot more proportional to how you exercise and how you exert yourself, right? Because there's a good portion of that, your strength, of your general strength, that is just purely neurological conditioning and neurological familiarity with a particular skill that you're trying to accomplish, right? So, I mean, let's just say you want to really improve your strength at bench press, sure, bench press, right? There's a skill component to that, a heavy skill based component to that, very particular set of neural pathways that need to light up to produce that movement, right? That skill. So to get better at it, you just keep doing it over and over and over and over. And not necessarily as a workout, right, to get you tired as hell, but as just a playful exercise that you just practice over and over. So there's that component. And then there's also the pure strength development component where you're fatiguing your muscle to the maximum extent, and you do that very infrequently, like once every 10 days, once every 7 days or so, and you combining those two would start to really get you stronger. Okay, so that's fairly independent from diet. It's like it doesn't really matter what kind of diet you do. If you structure your exercise in the right way, then you will get stronger. And I think the main difference between, so just getting back to your question, so the main difference between myself and someone else who does, maybe, let's just say for comparison's sake, the exact same workout that I'm doing, the difference with myself and my approach is that what I am taking in my diet, it doesn't accumulate unnecessary waste and fluids in the body. That's the difference. So someone might do my workout routine and experience better growth visually on the outside if they're eating conventional material that pack on waste and acids and the fluids that are required to neutralize those acids on the inside. So someone else might have a little bit more material or puffiness, right? So you might see that difference, and yeah, that's just how it is. Because when you're not doing all those things that pack on waste in the body, your body is very hesitant to put on extra material because it doesn't want to do that. Your body wants to be as efficient as possible. So you have to really signal strongly that if your body's going to increase the amount of dense muscle tissue that's there, it better damn well be necessary for life, right? Otherwise, your body won't do it. So when you naturalize your diet, right, some people might experience that as difficulty putting on weight or muscle. But that's kind of what you want, because you want your body to be more efficient and more healthy. Oh, I shouldn't speak for all people. That might not be what you want, right? We might prioritize getting bigger over health. So if that's the case, then yeah, sure. Then you can go and do, the other, like protein powders and all the unnecessary things, right? So you could, and then you might find that you get a little bit more size, right? So it's just, we just have to know what we want. But so you asked about like myself, like how is my strength charted over time? My answer is it depends on what I'm focusing. I notice that if I'm focusing on a particular thing, then I'll get stronger in that. And for things that I don't usually train as often, right, then those things will just kind of plateau. And and just the final answer to your question, in terms of my size has remained fairly constant throughout this whole journey, like fairly constant. I'm about 165, 163, around there, and my weight doesn't seem to budge that much. Right? Strength can improve because that's a neurological thing and a muscular coordination thing. So my strength can definitely improve in certain areas, but I don't find my size really taking off. If I wanted to do that while eating my current diet, I would just have to structure my workouts slightly differently and prefer a lot more volume of working out than I typically. So I would just have to structure my workouts differently.
Do you feel like there's a component of timing of when you eat after a workout? Do you feel like that can affect your size? As in, if you like refuel maybe an hour after a workout or maybe sooner compared to like maybe leaving it 10 hours? Because I know you're busy on set quite a lot of the time. So sometimes you might go like a whole day without eating. Do you feel like that can maybe impact the size, like the muscle size?
So does the timing of when you eat during the day or after a workout, is that a very strong variable or factor in how much muscle size you'll put on? Yeah, that's what you're asking.
Yeah, just in terms of like keeping the body anabolic or catabolic. I was just wonder how you feel about those kind of processes, if you can elaborate on that.
Gotcha. Okay. At the end of the day, it's you won't really go catabolic if you're simply eating enough for your body's requirements for the day, at whatever time that is. Okay, so you won't necessarily go catabolic if you just do that basic thing, right? Of having enough nutrition coming in for your particular body, for your particular. You do that, and you're okay, right? You might find a little bit of a physiological benefit in doing certain things and tweaking certain things. So if so you just mentioned that when I'm on set working for the day, I might not even eat at all, or just wait till I go home, whatever it is, 15 hours later. So if you were to eat later into your fasting window and prioritize a workout at the end of your fasting workout, your body might have a real thirst for taking in nutrition prior to that bit of exertion at the end of a fasting window, right? So you'll have a lot of hormonal activity that is going to help with muscle growth. But I mean, is that necessary? Is it necessary to do that all the time? I would probably say no. I would think that it's much more important how you work out, right? How you exercise and how you work out. That is probably the main component into how much size and strength you're going to put on. And are you not starving at the end of the day, right? If you take care of the basics, then really it boils down to just how you're exercising. And then once your basics are taken care of, yeah, you can tweak a couple of factors and see if that adds a little bit of an extra boost. Maybe you've hit a plateau and you want to try something new. Okay, I'll try stimulating more growth hormone release with a longer fast and then work out at the end. Okay, so now you can play around with those variables, but take care of the foundation first, and then you're pretty much just worrying about your exertion, like your activity, and that'll determine. Again, I always use it's an adaptation. Fitness and size, it's an adaptation. And so your body is dominated by signals. So you have to be sending your body the right signal that it requires an adaptation in your muscle strength or size in order to function day to day. That's what you're trying to do. So, I always use the analogy of your calluses when you're holding onto a bar for, I don't know, 10 minutes a day, let's just say. You'll develop calluses as an adaptation to that stress, because that's what's required for your body to hold onto a bar and not be in pain. So you do it for long enough, you get an adaptation. Doesn't matter if your diet's made up of like McDonald's and squirrel fur or something. Like either way, you'll get the adaptation.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Just quickly on that, I've heard you talk about in the past, you prefer to exercise more just throughout the day, just being generally active throughout the day. Is that still what you're currently doing? Or do you have like designated workouts at all? Or what does your kind of exercise routine look like, or like a typical day?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so to answer your question directly, yes, that's exactly what I do. I like to stay busy throughout the day. I tend to prefer the morning period. So from early morning till about 12, 1 o'clock, that's when I would say most of the playful strength challenges, mobility challenges, acro challenges, that's when I'm more likely to do them. And then when it comes time to have something to eat, yeah, a little bit less activity around the time when I'm eating, right? Or I should say immediately after. Probably don't want to eat or exercise immediately after you're done eating. And then later on into the evening, I might do. So yes, that's exactly what I do. I do two things. So I do that structure of exercise where I'm just like a monkey, right? Monkey, just always playing around, always swinging, always doing activity, but it's not necessarily a workout. That's what they do to locomote and live, right? So I structure it like that, just incorporating challenging things physically into the lifestyle, right? So most of the time I do that. The other way I work out is I do almost the exact opposite, very, very infrequently. So I do 100% high intensity till absolute failure exercises, right? And then allow for several days over a week to rest. So I'll do that maybe once every week and a half or so, right? Whether that's going to the gym and using machines and let's just say bench press again as an example. So bench press, just pressing slowly and under control, and do it until my muscles are absolutely fatigued beyond any hope of moving the resistance an inch more, right? And that's it, just one set of that. And once you failed on that exercise, move on to the next, do a couple exercises, and that's it, right? So high intensity work I will incorporate, and then the vast majority of the time I'm doing exactly what you said, just playfully engaging in either strength or mobility or acrobatic challenges just throughout the day.
Yeah, perfect. That clears up a lot. I think that's quite important about training to failure as well. If maybe muscle growth or adaptation is your goal, because like you say, the body's so intelligent. If you provide the adequate stimulus, then it will only grow. So yeah, thank you for that.
That's right. Yeah, and the rest component becomes so important, so important. So when I'm doing my regular day-to-day thing where I'm just playing with strength and acro and mobility and whatnot, you're staying far away from fatigue, because you wouldn't want to compromise the work that you did in your high intensity session several days ago, right? You want your body to be able to rest. And so if you fatigue yourself again at some point, then you might start re-damaging things that are trying to build up and give you the proper adaptation. So in one sense, we are avoiding fatigue like the plague. And then in those smaller instances, when you are going for that kind of pure strength adaptation, right? Then yeah, fatigue is your friend. You want to go into the depths of fatigue, but that's only for a very limited amount of time. And then the rest of the time you're resting, and then neurologically training for the rest of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really key distinction you made there, because it depends on your goals, doesn't it? What you're training for. Because for you as a stunt man, obviously you want to be able to perform day in, day out. You don't want to be completely fatigued. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying. I want to be as physically adaptable for whatever circumstance comes my way. Okay? So yeah, 6 a.m. rolls around. Maybe my neighbors walk outside and they catch some weird guy and balancing on his shoulder in a weird position. Like, what the hell is this guy doing? So I'm doing all sorts of stuff to just try and be as hyper adaptable to whatever physical challenge I need. And in order to do that, you need to challenge your nervous system with doing all sorts of things, right? So it's accustomed to that as best as possible.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
What are what comes to mind when I ask you the 3 top teachers or people you've learned from that kind of inspire a lot of the information you give on your channel, especially about natural law and stuff like that?
Right. Yeah, great question. So there's a couple of them. So we've got Herbert Shelton, right? Classic Herbert Shelton, right? Very, very helpful, very influential. There's Adolf Just, okay, who wrote a book called Return to Nature, and that's a fantastic book to read, right? Everyone should read that one as well. You've got Arnold Ehret, very helpful, very influential. I'm sure most of us are familiar with Arnold Ehret's work. Hilton Otema was very helpful, very influential. Max Heindel, who was a Rosicrucian mystic, okay, and was capable of, you got to read his material, just capable of some really fantastic stuff. And so I learned a bunch from Max Heindel as well. Rudolf Steiner, very, very deeply goes into the kind of spiritual science related to diet and health and anatomy. Okay, and all that was, starting to really gel with all of these natural hygiene concepts that I was learning from the natural hygiene movement, right? From Shelton and all the other associates. So that's a bunch of names. I hope that helps. Arnold Ehret, Herbert Shelton, and all of the other hygienists, right? Sylvester Graham, what's his name? Tilden, Dr. Tilden, wrote Toxemia Explained, right? All of these books and authors, very, very helpful, very influential. And then Max Heindel, there was one that I'm missing on top of Rudolf Steiner as well. Oh, geez.
Adolf Hughes?
No, yeah, Adolf Hughes.
Oh.
Yeah, I said
him already. Like other than what you said.
Yeah, other than all of these. I know that I'm missing I know I'm missing a bunch, but off the top of my head, I mean that would get anybody started, right? And turn you from someone who didn't know anything to knowing more than you could possibly want to know, just with those individuals. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What also is your intentions behind creating your channel for your free melons? I'm just curious, like what led you to start doing it, kind
of. In its simplicity, in its pure simplicity, all I'll say is that obligation hit me. That's it, right? So taking in, reading, taking in. At some point, the realization dawns on you that you have a responsibility to give some of that back. And there's only so much you can take in before I think that realization and obligation, I'll use the word obligation, really starts to become pressing on your psyche. So that's it, right? It's the responsibility of being of service to your fellow man, to your fellow woman, right? To humankind. Right? That's it. So being of service is deeply rewarding, it's deeply gratifying. It's correct. You gain as much from what you give out. If I'm studying to give you guys stuff, I'm also studying for myself, right? It's win-win all, in all directions. So being of service was the highest noble effort in all of human history that was recognized, right? You peruse all the literature, all the adepts are all on the same page, and being of service is like the highest good, and it's not only good for everybody else, good for yourself as well. It enshrines the love principle, the moral principle. Anyway, all of this. So in simplicity, I'll stop talking now. In its simplicity, just the responsibility to be of service, I think, hit me over time. That's what.
Especially during these times, right? Because I feel like the information you give is so helpful and needed, or something like that.
Thank you so much. You have no idea you have no idea what that means to me to hear you say that, because I couldn't agree more. Like, look at oh my God, everyone's confused, everyone's sick, no one knows what's going on. Like, it's just it's madness out there. You guys know how it is. You live in the world too, just like I do. It's crazy. So yes, just doing what you can. I mean, no one can be a know-it-all. No one can be a specialist in all things, as much as you might try to be, which is good. because you start to get a generalized kind of familiarity with as many spheres, as many avenues and subjects of study as possible. Sure, you try to get your handle on lots of different things, but no one's a know-it-all, right? Everyone's got their strengths, everyone's got their weaknesses, everyone's got their particular places where their attention seems to be more channeled and focused. And that's exactly as it should be, right? This universe is infinite variability, right? God's expression of divinitude expressed in thousands and multiplicities of all different forms and shapes and sizes and preferences and whatnot. So everyone's going to have their thing that they're focused on, and in that thing, you try to be of service in that particular field that you are suited to. And so, yeah, that's, I guess, this came more naturally to me. Video editing and being in front of a camera, fitness and health and whatnot. It seems to be a good candidate for that, given what my lifestyle was, and just so. Like, all right, maybe I'll start up a YouTube channel and just try to give that back out. And then someone else might have a completely different approach to being of service, right? That doesn't involve YouTube or making videos, some other completely different thing. And that's how you be of service and contribute to the greater good. So yeah, anyway, everyone's doing their thing. That's it. We're all in the same boat. We're all doing the same thing together. We're all heading to the same place. So it's nice to hear you say that, and I really thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Hi, Eli.
Hey, what's up, brother?
For a long time, you're a fruitarian, and you said that your weight haven't changed much. What about the meal sizes? Did they change? Did you start when you started? Because some folks tell that in the beginning they really have appetite when they transition when they go into the fruits. So how was with you in the beginning and now? Because it's a really long story.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and that phenomenon of having a more ravenous or bigger appetite in the beginning of your transition or your beginning of your dietary reform is very common. It's almost predictable. I'd almost be worried if someone didn't have that right at the beginning of the transition. Okay. And it's because, again, oh, excuse me. I should tell you, just a couple of days ago on set, there was atmosphere, like synthetic kind of smoke in the air, and I'm breathing some of it in. My body really didn't like it. So excuse me if my throat's a little funny sounding today. But yeah, I left set that day. I'm like, oh man, that whatever they were pumping through the air, I really didn't like that. So anyhow, okay, your desire for a big quantity of food, yes, very normal. And in my experience, it lasted for, let's see, I would say my appetite was bigger in the first two to 3 years. Okay, if I'm giving you a rough timeline. Okay, roughly 2 to 3 years. I wouldn't say in the third year. First 2 years. First 2 years, most notably, is where I would have had a bigger appetite. I also would have included a lot more dried fruits. Okay, so dates and figs, dried figs and whatnot. More bananas. So bananas and figs, bananas and dates. I incorporated a lot more of those into the mix in the first year. As time went on, then yes, your body is going to get more efficient. It's going to get cleaner, for one thing. So you're not going to have all these metabolic waste products clogging up your tissues, your channels of elimination. So your system is holistically going to be cleaner. So when the channels get fumigated and cleaned out, you're going to have an easier time extracting nutrition from food, right? And being more sustained over the long term, especially if you're doing things like fasting, right? So with fasting, we talked about exercise. Fasting starts to turn into an internal metabolic conditioning as well, where you are teaching your body, hey, I'm forcing you to be more efficient and still function, right? And you're practicing that over and over. So it starts to turn into something like exercise, where you fast over and over. You're conditioning your internal system to be more efficient. So you pair that with what you're doing with diet. Now what you have is a formula for, in a couple of years, starting to really need less and less and less to be very, very comfortable and functional. So to answer your question, first 2 years, that's when I noticed appetite was a bit bigger. As time went on in the next couple of years, I noticed, okay, I'm starting to feel a little bit less motivated to have all of this food coming in, right? Oh, I'm starting to feel even stronger and more energetic if I just eat less, right? Skip dinner. Oh, you feel so much better in the morning. Right? Oh, wait a little bit longer before having my meal. Oh, I feel incredible, right? And so now it looks like, again, just a lot less. Like I'm just so much more comfortable with far less than I was eating prior to in my first couple of years. So yes, that's normal for everybody. I would say everybody that transitions from a regular kind of conventional cooked food diet into a raw food diet, if you just make that harsh jump, that harsh transition, yes, you're going to notice that you're going to have more of a, I don't want to use the word challenge. It's not a challenge. It's just a necessary change, right? Where you're going to find that you need to eat more because what you're eating is not this concentrated material anymore. So yeah, you need to take up a little bit more because your body is still in the condition that it used to be in. And it takes a while for your body to make those subtle changes to all your tissues and all your biochemistry to finally get to that efficiency that we're looking for. So it takes time. So yeah, you can expect you're consistent with it, then those changes of efficiency starts to really be experienced. So yeah, by year 3, 4, then I'm starting to notice that. Then by year 6, 7, then there was like another milestone that I think was crossed, where it's like, ooh, I feel like I've just kicked into the next level of ease and simplicity and just not needing anything. I think there was another little milestone achieved around that 6 years, 7 years. So I hope that answered your question generally. Did I answer that?
Yeah, you answered. It's okay.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Great. Yeah. So very normal, and everyone is consistency. Consistency is the key, because most of us are not consistent. We were just talking about, you guys know how the world is, you know how people are, right? Consistency is a huge problem. Very, very rarely are people just consistent all the time for years and years and years, right? People fall off track very easily. And if you can avoid that, if you can mitigate against that, just being doggedly consistent, that's where the results come. Right? And I'm one of those people that have been very consistent. And lo and behold, for me, it's integrated itself seamlessly in my lifestyle, and it's not. I don't have to think about anything. There's no intellectualizing. Like, I've left all the intellectualizing on the other side, right, in my past life. So it's just an effortless kind of easy walk through at least the diet portion of my life.
Just quickly on that, how much more efficient do you think we can get the body? Because I was speaking to Chris Kendall the other day, and I think he threw a number. He said roughly 10-15% is like his estimate of how much you can improve digestion, which to me, that seemed quite low. Because for you personally, how if we're going by the, the outdated calorie model,
Right.
how has your calorie intake differed from like the start to now? Because from what I've observed, it would be way more than 10-15% just from what I've seen on your videos.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. Okay. How much of a
Calorie
percentage are
difference
you
is there
looking
now?
at?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't really measure these types of things, so you'll have to forgive me if I don't have like a quantifiable
Yeah.
number to give you as an answer.
Maybe like a typical day. So like
But
maybe in year one, you were eating, I don't know, 3
yeah,
melons a day, 10 bananas, etc. And now you're only
yeah,
eating. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off with my yeahs there. Okay. So see, in the first year, second year, I did even less of that measuring than I do now, which is even now is very, very sparse. So I didn't take any of these measurements. I was just like, the blissful ignorant fruitarian. Okay, I I would imagine, I would guess that my calorie intake was up around the 2,500 to 3,000 mark on a daily basis, if I'm guessing correct. Yeah, a couple, maybe two cantaloupes, a bunch of bananas, some dates, a snack somewhere else, maybe a couple mangoes, maybe like 5 pears, um, pineapple at some point, right? So you're looking at 2,500, 3,000 calories maybe. Okay. If I'm comparing that to what I'm doing now, then I very often I know that I've had like 900 calorie days, 1,200 calorie days, 1,500 calorie days, and anywhere in between. I had 700 calorie days. I've had, and then every once in a while there might be more than that. There might be a 1,800, 2,100 calorie day. If someone dumps a whole bunch of durian in front of my door just as a gift, that's not a good thing, because I will probably eat the durian. So on a day like that, then yeah, for sure, like 2,200 calories or something.
Yeah, that's reassuring. Because I'm in my first year, and I'd say I probably consume 2,500 to 3,000 calories. And I was just wondering, is that like a standard kind of, if that's something you've experienced? Because with the more Doug Graham approach and the 80-10-10, he doesn't seem to think that the calorie needs and requirements and intake really goes down that much over time. But obviously you're living proof of the fact that, you've some days you've halved that, or over half that amount of calories. So how do you feel about that approach? I know you've touched on it before, but do you think, because I feel like you can just train the appetite as well, because I could easily, before I was having about 1,500 calories, but now I can easily, if I want to, I can easily have more calories. So I guess, do you feel the digestive system is kind of like a muscle and you can just train it?
Yes. I really think so. Yeah, I really think that this is something that you can train to become more efficient, right? Absolutely. I mean, in my own experience, I'm forced to come to that conclusion where I'm going out and having like ridiculously exertive days, right? Like days where it's just like constantly, they're fighting, falling, getting hip tossed into walls, right? Do that all day for an entire afternoon, and go on lunch break, and like I'm fine. I'm not hungry at all. Like I'm not going to eat anything on this lunch break. I'm just going to read. Do it again right after lunch. Bam, blah, blah, fall all over the place, fight, whatever it is. Go home, and then by the time I get home, I'm like, all right, I guess I'm ready for some food. But really, if I stop and think about it, I'm like, I'm not hungry. Like, this is crazy. Like, how am I doing this? Right? And it's not because I'm magic or anything. Everybody, we're all the same. You guys are all the same. We're all the same. It's just you're training yourself, right? You're conditioning yourself to be more efficient. And I think if I've included a bit more fasting in conjunction with this diet, right, over time, consistently over time, then maybe that got me there a little more comfortably. Maybe I'm not sure. But to answer your question, yes, I do believe that is the case, right? Kind of has to be. We're designed as organisms to respond to our internal mental states with some sort of physical expression of what's going on internally. And our bodies are hyper adaptable on so many levels, on levels that we probably haven't even recognized. And I think this is absolutely one of them, where yes, as much as we're physical beings in here in the physical world, yeah, there's going to be a proportion of our lives that where we have to take in some material to furnish the physical body, right? You're in the physical world, you have to play the physical game to a certain degree, okay? But I think there's a lot of leeway there where you can use your will to make changes, functional, structural changes to your internal biochemistry, where you're getting a lot more efficient at performing and making a certain amount of exertion with a lot less, as opposed to the other person who, for the same amount of exertion, requires a lot more, right? So there's a whole bunch of leeway between those two states that I think is in our power to control. Absolutely. Otherwise, I would not be able to live how I'm living right now were that not the case. No way. There's just no way.
Kind of on that note too, when do you still experience weaker days or like days when your body's eliminating when you're on, like, let's say a longer dry fast or something, now that you're eating fruit and fasting more often? Are there still days where you're still like, do you think you've reached like efficiency? Like, I guess I'm just trying to I don't know. I think you can run with that.
No. I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Will I experience the same type of days that might characterize someone in the early years, where they're experiencing a couple of the off days of either a detox or a slowdown or less energy, right?
Right. I think there's also that, like, when I've read in Eric's stuff, they talk about how, like, let's say when you go into the really longer fasting, you can have like deeper healing and stuff, like maybe even in the bones or in like
right.
things like that.
Yes. Okay. So you're asking if I were to do another, let's just say, longer fast, would I experience those types of
or if you have, because I know you've done some over like I think a week or something, like dry fasting and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. In general, the types of really adverse cleansing reactions, I haven't seen as many of them. I've seen many of the minor ones, right? Like just minor little irritations, or the skin gets a bit red and then it goes away, like things like that, right? I've never had like major healing crises, or what did I just say? Crises. During fasting, and I think I attribute that, and like I'm not a know-it-all here, but I'm attributing that to how I implemented cleansing and fasting into my lifestyle for several years before I even started doing this. And my diet was fairly clean leading up to when I ultimately made the choice to go raw fruitarian, right? So I think what had happened was I just dealt with a lot of this internal reform in small doses over the years, right? Even before I started doing it. So that when it did come time for me to do like the longer water fast or the longer dry fast, what ended up happening was I didn't see as many of like the horrible purging detox effects that a lot of people do when they go on a longer water fast or dry fast. Excuse me. But of course, I did what I do notice is other things. So energy dips, that's for sure going to happen to everybody doing a fast. You're going to have days where you're more energetic and days where you're just like, okay, I don't want to move, right? I'm just comfortable. I don't want to move. Lightheadedness, you get up from bed too quickly. It's like, oh, okay, ready to hit. Oh, dear God, right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to get up too quickly on day 5, 6, 7 of your fast. So there's that. Aside from that, though, there's not too much queasiness, nausea. I never got too much of that. There was maybe a couple of minutes, right, in a portion of the day during a water fast, right? One of my last water fasts, where for like 20 minutes or so, I'm like, my stomach feels a little strange right now, and then you wait for a bit, and then it goes away, right? That kind of thing. So no, not too many of the really profound cleansing reactions and responses that I've noticed in the more recent years doing fasts. So that I haven't seen. And I think, again, just to reiterate, I think that's because I had done that in such small doses for so long over the years leading up to it that I mitigated the bigger dramatic cleansing crises during the fasts now, right? So I think that's what's happening. Again, you have to tell me if I've answered your question. Does that answer your question, kind of?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to know your experience because I feel like you're further along the path than most people. So
okay.
As far as fasting experience, yeah, I think, and that's what Eric says too, you know, it's better to do a lot of shorter fasts for years before you try anything.
Yeah, because you know, it's yes, correct. Yeah, because you're playing this game against an actual, I mean, if you could extract it, then you could measure it, but a quantifiable physical mass of material, right? That is the disease that we're trying to mitigate against, right? So the proportion of this material that is distributed all throughout our body, right? Everyone has a different amount of that material that is trapped in them. So how much of that there is to lose is going to determine how uncomfortable their either their fasts are or their cleanses are. Juice cleanse, fruit cleanse, whatever it is. So whether it's a type of cleanse or whether it's a fast, it's the amount of that tissue or that material, the disease matter, the foreign material, the byproducts of incomplete digestion, all that nonsense, right? The sheer weight of that is still in there, and where it's distributed in what organ system it's more concentrated, right? That's important. Might be concentrated more in the liver, and someone else more in the lungs, someone else more in the spleen. So everyone's different. So the amount and where it's concentrated is going to determine how uncomfortable that person is when they do a fast. And so the more of that you can eliminate, the less discomfort there's going to be, because those materials, once they're how do I say this, galvanized to leave the system, right, because of what you're doing in your in your health practice, and you would galvanize them to leave by adopting healthier practices. Okay? So once they get that signal that they can now leave the body, they can cause friction as they rub up against all the other things in the fluid system of our body on the way out for elimination. So that friction you experience is heat, inflammation, discomfort, headaches, and whatnot. So anyway, all I'm saying is that, yeah, everyone's different in how much of that material is trapped inside of them. And one person will have more discomfort than the next because of the amount of that stuff still inside.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey Eli, thank you so much. I wanted to ask you also on a slightly different topic, and feel free to share, and if it's too much, we'll cut it out for the YouTube part. But how do you feel the next, like, what do you see coming in the next few months in the situation of the world, and the evolution between like a lot of, let's say we could call it evil or plans, maybe trying to be unfolded, and at the same time a general awakening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a really good question, because as the tools and the methods of manipulation have become so much more technologically advanced, the groups and individuals that are looking to squash the human spirit are finding that they can ramp up the speed of the game plan a lot more intensity, right? So you're seeing this attack from so many different directions, right? It's crazy. Now, in the end, God always wins, nature always wins. So in the end, there's no other outcome but for harmony and goodness to reign. So nature always reclaims all the cards and chips at the end of it, right? So there's that we have to take comfort in. But in the short term, then yeah, we've got all of these ways that that we are being affronted. Okay. And as you also said, we're seeing that a lot of people are coming online. Like, I mean, look at what we're talking about right now. This stuff wasn't happening that long ago. And so a lot of people, by necessity, in response to what the world is throwing at us, it's like, yeah, it's kind of the natural reaction as oppression kind of clenches its fist and starts pummeling the human spirit. The human spirit is going to put up some defenses. It's like, ow, 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 no, stop, right? They're going to start defending themselves just by necessity, right? That's the natural reaction. And in the last several years, I think that's the silver lining, in that maybe it required a little bit of stress to bolster the proper adaptation. It's interesting how you can see these principles of nature echoing through all of our human experience. We talked about adaptation. We talked about, like, your calluses from hanging. We talked about exercise. We talked about the adaptation of fasting. What are all these positive adaptations we're talking about? We're talking about a response to stress. And so the stress of evil trying to impose its will on you, if you're able to deal with it, is you can make a positive adaptation where you are strengthening your resolve against that which pulls you away from your humanity. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So here's my answer to this is, as much as the world is going to start throwing at us in the next several years, if we stick to the faith of principles that we understand, right? If we just stay fast to being the same moral and properly guided individuals that we try to be, and not let circumstance take away from the integrity that you have inside. If you maintain that integrity, at some point, that will start to characterize the conditions that we're seeing all over. And more people start to wake up, your influence starts to be spread and shared amongst more minds, and then you're just going to have more tools and resources to be able to stand in the face of and stand in defiance of this crushing wave of evil that is just kind of trying to swallow up everything. But in the end, it can't really swallow up everything entirely, because in my opinion, this whole thing, the universe, the world, everything, these are all creation. This is all a creation of a grand intelligence, a grand, loving and benevolent intelligence. It's all been put here. And in this world of duality, it's like evil is a necessary byproduct of creating a physical world where goodness is the undercurrent that kind of fashions and molds everything. You have to have an evil element that exists in order for you to know what is truly good and truly moral. So I think we should always recognize that evil is always going to be part of our experience, but it doesn't mean that we have to entertain evil or have it show up, right? It's going to be there in the background as a possibility, because that's what's required for us to even know what goodness is. So that's always going to be there. But the more that we have discussions like this, the more that we influence minds, the more and more we're going to see resistance to evil characterize the human condition. And so that's what we're all working towards. And no matter what comes at us, no matter what gets thrown at us, we always have to maintain our integrity and our sure-footedness in the goodness and the grandeur of the human experience, and what it really means to be a spirit incarnate here in the physical world. And having faith and comfort in that is, I think, what's going to help us navigate through this, this period of darkness. In my opinion. Oh, I think Alex was. Oh, okay. You unmuted yourself.
Yeah, about fasting, I have a question.
Yeah.
Which one do you prefer, dry fasting or water fasting? And and which one is more comfortable for you? Because somebody finds dry fasting more comfortable. I'm talking about 1 day, maybe 2 days. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
And also 1 day of dry fasting is like 3 days of water fasting. It's been told.
of course, totally. I think I prefer the feeling of a dry fast. There's something about the complete shut off, the complete shut off of sensation internally, that starts to feel so much more, in my opinion, blissful. If you were to imagine what it would be like just floating in space, right? Just floating in space, right? Or you go to those like sensory deprivation chambers, right? Something like that, where it's just nothing, there's nothing happening on the inside. There's something about that state that I think I'm experiencing as good. I know I'm being very general with how I'm describing this as good, but there's some sort of refreshing, how do I say this? Like sleep. I mean, like sleep, like the best type of sleep is the type of sleep where you are completely undisturbed by any stimulus and you get the best quality sleep. Yeah, right? If there's a nightlight, if there's a woman yelling, if there's a chicken running around, if there's construction, but you're not going to get the best quality sleep. You might get to sleep, but that noise, that stimulation, it's a trigger, it's a cue that the physical world is not completely at rest, and so your your mind is going to have a little bit more wakefulness if there are stimulants coming from without. So that being the case, or that being said, when it comes to fasting, what would the feeling that I prefer, yes, is the no water, no food. If we're talking about the first couple of days, right? 2-3 days, right? 2-3 days. That period is such a wonderful feeling internally, right? It's just this peace and ease that just, is very hard to replicate. Water fasting is so similar. It's so similar. I mean, both feel very, 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 very good. But if we're talking about going long term, obviously, or not long, but longer duration, then yeah, water fasting is going to be definitely safer for the average person, probably more advisable for the average person. And then dry fasting, something that you keep for shorter periods if you're going to play with those. But yeah, to answer your question, yes. And I've always found that I experience deeper levels of healing on the other side of a dry fast. That's just my own personal experience. So take that with a grain of salt. Well, maybe not salt. I'm not a big fan of salt, but take it with a grain of something else. But take it with a grain of whatever. In my experience, yes, I've noticed that I get deeper levels of healing if I do shorter dry fasts, right, rather than the water fast.
I also have some experience, yes, in dry fasting, but
Cool.
when I've heard of these things, dry fasting resonated more with me. I don't know, I just don't like to drink a lot of water, maybe, and it's more practical also. And we were talking about sleep and sleep deprivation, and is it sleep also only a habit? And now, when I remember, I tapped into one situation after 3 days of dry fasting. I just couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
I tried to sleep, but not to. I was so energetic, but I just couldn't. And that was all night. And that was the last day of my dry fasting. And that was such a weird experience.
Yeah, that's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, if you have the battery all the time, optimal, battery full. Well,
Yeah, I'd love to know this as well, because I'm currently on 1 hour sleep in about 30 hours. And yeah, I'd like to hear your take on it.
Yeah. That's great, guys. Yeah, and I'm so happy that it's always just nice to hear from people that are doing these same things that require a lot of responsibility to self, a lot of discipline, right? It's great to have this conversation with you guys. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
And as a parenthesis, I think this discussion is quite inspired by a few of us having read also Return to the Brain of Eden, that I remember you recommended at least to me when we had our first interview. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, great book. Yeah, really, really great. So I think, okay, now with sleep starts to be a necessity. Yes, it's one of those necessities that we require in order to energize the spiritual component of ourselves that is inhabiting the physical. And there's a certain magic that happens in sleep that is very, very difficult to replicate. Now, it's the same story with sleep, though, that you would find in eating, like your relationship to eating. So we know that you can eat and live. And we know that you can structure your lifestyle so that you eat or need less to be able to do the same amount of exertion in your lifestyle. So you can, as much as eating is probably always going to be a thing in some capacity, okay? Yeah, you can radically tailor the amount of it that you need to be very, 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 very functional. And I think sleep is similar in that case, where as much as sleep will always play a role, right? It's going to have to play a role in your lifestyle. But yes, you can tailor things and conditions such that you might need less of it, right? Especially on a fast. So those dry fasts, I think that's one of the most challenging aspects of a fast. It's not the fast itself, not how you feel on a fast. All that's fairly manageable. But oh my goodness, the amount of time that now exists in a day when you're fasting, that's what's challenging for people. You like, all right, I am now going to go to bed on my fast. All right, I'm up. It's like 15 minutes. That's all I slept. And you feel fantastic. Like, what the hell do I do with all this time? That's really challenging, right? Having all this time now where you're mentally alert and it's like you're ready to go. So that's not easy, right? That takes a little bit of. So yes, to answer the question, okay, with sleep, particularly during times of fasting, okay, you're going to experience that you need less of it just because you're conserving so much energy just by shutting off your digestive machinery and probably a bunch of other metaphysical dynamics that I'm not aware of, right? There's all sorts of stuff happening in the background that we're not aware of. So on top of all that, yeah, you're just saving a whole bunch of energy, and so you won't need as much sleep to be recovered. So you'll definitely notice that on a fast, and then in the regular waking hours, when you're just doing your typical daily routine of eating a good diet of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whatever it is, okay, the raw food diet. If you're doing that on your regular day to day, getting some activity in the mix as well, yeah, you're probably going to get to a point where you find, I probably don't need as much sleep as I used to back in the day, right? I feel a lot more refreshed in the morning, right? When I wake up nowadays. So yeah, these for sure, you can tailor the amount of sleep that you need. It'll always play a role because it's like when that astral component of yourself, when it disengages and detaches from your physical, it does something. It's like it needs to be connected to the energetic world above the physical to kind of bathe in that energy and then bring that back into your physical body, and then you wake up and then you're refreshed, right? So there, you do need that, right? You need that. I say need. I always want to be willing to accept the exceptions and the other possibilities of what rigorous, deep spiritual control could possibly have on the body, the effects that could have on the body. Yes, there could be that case where, let's just say, someone was locked in deep meditation for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, day upon day upon day. Yeah, you could conceive of someone in that particular condition maybe needing nothing that we would call sleep. They're just always in this state of, half in, half out, right? So there's exceptions and there's gray areas to what I'm saying, all right? So please don't think I'm talking like hard black and whites. But for most cases, yeah, it is going to be, yeah, you need that base level of sleep to recover your health and your vitality. But how much of that is going to be dependent on all the other conditions that you impose on your lifestyle. So it's like food in the sense that, yeah, you need it, but you can moderate.
On the note of sleeping, I'm curious, as you've gone along your path and you've developed more like freedom and fearlessness, maybe even. How have your experience of your dreams changed as well? Like, how do you operate in your dreams differently? I guess I'm kind of curious about
Yeah,
that.
no, that's a good question too. And I think all that starts to they start to improve together, right? You make improvements in your lifestyle, you're going to see improvements in your non-physical lifestyle as well. Okay. So what I've seen change is just the type of connection between those two states, right? So easier to remember your dream. So the more you have, the more I capitalize on the time when I'm lying down to go to bed, right? Because every night when I go to bed, I'm always trying to, like, that's opportunity. So that is always opportunity for me to do some sort of internal work. So that's every day. That's every day when I go to bed. It's always like it's an exciting thing every day because, oh man, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna see what happens if I dwell on this particular experience, right? I'm not gonna get into it, but yeah, just 2 days ago had really interesting experiences while I was awake, in bed, but awake, and it's just like, oh, okay, how do I reconcile that with this? So anyway, there's this whole type of deeper connection that's over the last several years I've noticed is becoming more of a thing in the lifestyle. Having to deal with having dreams. So let's talking about just dreams, where you have dreams that are not just your inner self giving you messages or relaying messages to you, but are actual sensitivities to energetic states that your friends or families are experiencing, right? So being sensitive to those, picking up on messages, not messages, on energy signatures coming from those individuals that you pick up on. And now you have information, data that has been relayed to your conscious from the energy signatures broadcasted by friends and relations that you're close to. And so in the last several years, recognizing that I'm having more of those dreams that are these types of energy sensitivities, that's really interesting. So
Cool.
how is, oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, do you have
I just said that's cool.
Oh, you said that's cool. Yeah. So that's something that, okay, that's one thing that I've noticed starts to be more regular in my life. Okay, so picking up on friends and family, maybe they're stressed, maybe they have problems, maybe my buddy's having a gut issue. I have a dream of me catering to my buddy's gut and like touching him, like, so I call him up, hey, how's your stomach? And like, are you having stomach problems? Like, how the hell did you know that? Right? That kind of thing. So that starts to happen. And I'm not saying that does happen for everybody. I'm just saying that's what has happened. And then, of course, the other dynamics of non-physical work, of either out of body work or just kind of inner work. Playing with what allows me to make connections as fast and efficiently as possible, right? That's always something that's very interesting for me. So Eli, what do I have to do in order to get myself into that state that you experienced the other night? What can I learn from that to put myself in that state faster tonight? What is it? What condition? What am I doing? Am I using my energy body to relax myself in a deep way that I wasn't doing before? Is it a particular bit of imagery that puts me in a state of mind where all of a sudden the hypnagogic imagery starts to be really, really present in my mind? Like what? So playing with all of these questions and things that you can't really Google. This is all just internal work, and playing with that connection between your higher self that has all the answers and yourself in this conscious experience. Yes, strengthening that and noticing that these two are working together to allow me to live my life. I think I've noticed in the past several years that there's a better connection there that is just yet to be fleshed out as you gain more and more experience. And it's not to say that someone couldn't start experiencing these things without diet reform. It's just that it becomes infinitely more likely, right? If you are doing the right physical work.
Right, because your nervous system and all your connections in general are like lit up, kind of, or open. Yeah.
And we always have to remember that waste products, right? These things have energy signatures associated with them. There's nothing in the physical world that isn't broadcasting some sort of energy signature, right? Some sort of energy signature. And there's a type of energy signature associated with things that are dying, dead, rotting, decaying, right? These are all energy signatures. Energy generating physical materials, right? Or material that can influence all of the other competing energy signatures that your body, your mind, your spirit is trying to broadcast. So the less of the interfering physical elements that produce less lower vibrational energies, the less of them that there are in the picture that are interfering with other energies in your body, the easier access you'll have to the higher influences, to the better and higher influence, right? So it's like there's definitely a physical thing there where you can improve your physicality and the spirit improves as well, and also vice versa. You can have a pitiful, deplorable physical condition and really, really work on yourself in the highest sense, and then you'll see improvements there too. Yeah. But then if you do them both at the same time, oh my goodness, right? That's just a one.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, Eli, I wanted to ask a question personal for myself. So, which is going to be a little bit hard, but I'll try. So I've been basically maybe 95% raw, 80% fruits for the past 2 years. And I feel good overall, but there's a few things where, like, in terms of strength, I feel it could be better. And I also have little pains in the back. So because you're on a very clean diet and at the same time moving a lot and quite a strong man, I feel you could be the right person to have a good perspective on it. I'm wondering if you have so some people were thinking, oh, maybe you have deficiencies because I have like pain a little bit in the neck that I got from jiu-jitsu, but it's not healing so fast. And then when I go to the gym at some point, sometimes in my lower back also I have a little nerve pinching. What do you recommend in terms of maybe supplement? My partner said, oh, you should try magnesium. Okay, I'm having some magnesium at night. Supplements or routines, like I stretch almost every day for like half an hour or so, or some types of movement to stay injury free. What's been your general experience with that? Like I feel with all I'm doing, I shouldn't have like those pains in the back, for example.
Yeah. So, okay. What I would say is that it might not be that it's your diet that's not doing the work for you, right? What can very often happen is because we're human and we live our lives, the longer that we're here on the planet, the more time that we have to accumulate familiar neuromuscular patterns, right? That might preferentially use some muscles over others, depending on what our typical daily routine is. So let's just say it's that construction worker, it's the martial artist, right? Doing a particular thing for a longer period of time. Even if their diet is pristine, right, and very healthy, you might still be getting this imbalanced an imbalancing of what muscles are being used and how, and your body will have to compensate by doing something that maybe is resulting in a little bit of pain, right? Even if the diet is good and clean. So what I'm saying is, it might be that you would just have to tweak what you do with and how you structure your mobility work and flexibility, and you would start to mitigate whatever the pain is. So, okay, here's one interesting principle. Let's just say you've got pain in your knee, right? What you might want to do is you might want to strengthen, right? Really, really strengthen all the muscles antagonistic to where you're feeling the pain. So if you've got pain in your tricep, for example, then you might want to make sure that you're exercising and strengthening your bicep, right? The antagonizer to where you're feeling your pain. Okay, that can have a balancing effect. You also might want to mobilize and strengthen everything around your joint. So neck pain, I can relate to neck pain as well. And I can relate to having neck pain be relent and go away if I did the right types of stretching. I'll give you an example. All right, I'll give you an example. I'm going to take off my earpiece for a second. So you guys can hear me, right? Yeah. So let's just say I'm having pain in the bottom left of my neck here. Something that I would do is I wouldn't just stretch, okay? I wouldn't just stretch my neck and leave it at that. What I would do is I would try to be actively engaged with my neck muscles and try to do this, right? This action of pushing my neck this direction. And I would use my hands to stop that from happening. And I would fight, right? So I'm trying to do this with my neck, but I'm not letting my hand is preventing my head from making that movement. And you're fighting, actively engaging here while the muscle is at length. And then relax. Okay? And then do it again. So actively strengthening, like giving your muscles strength challenges, okay, while being lengthened, that is going to improve your mobility. And when you mobilize all of the mobilize your joint by strengthening and lengthening all the muscles in and around the joint, you'll probably find, oh my goodness, so much relief in not very long at all. Back pain, like, I mean, a while ago, I dealt with some back pain, right? There was an injury I had like a long time ago, and that caused like a bit of a tweak. And then there were a couple of things that I had to pay attention to. And it's like, oh my God, all this relief. And yeah, so sometimes it really is just mobilizing your joint and strengthening areas of your body that you're not accustomed to strengthening at stretched out lengthening ranges. So with your neck, right? Work on, so for you, if you're having neck pain, work on, yes, stretching your neck, but making sure that you are getting your neck really strong by fighting against resistance while you're stretched out completely. So right now I'm adding all this resistance and making my neck move. Right?
Is this called PNF?
Yeah, like PNF, right? Yeah, exactly. Like PNF.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. And mobilizing in lots of different directions. So
and you prioritize doing it while lengthen and doing like this, or because I've been doing with straps, for example, but in that case it's more like I have the straps, it's a movement more like this.
Do both, right? Yeah, okay. You do both. Yeah, I would say do both. Any movement that you do there is going to be helpful, but in terms of like being very therapeutic, then yeah, what I would want to do is I would want to find where the limits of my flexibility are. Okay, so that's my range. That's as far as I can move my neck. Now I'm going to use my hand and add even more stretch, just a little bit. Okay, so now I'm really, really lengthened. And now from there, I'm going to fight with my neck muscles to try to bring my head back up to this position, but I'm not going to allow myself to do that with my hand. And so if I do that and push and push and push and hold, fight, and then relax, and then maybe even stretch a bit further, now you're training your muscles to be very strong, right? To have tension, but at length, and that will relax them and put less tension on the joint itself. So you do that for everything around the joint, and you'll find like, oh man, this feels a lot better, right? And it wasn't really your diet that was failing you. It's just that when we fall into movement patterns over time, right, then what can happen is your body can compensate because we're not perfect movers. We do things that are slightly imperfect with our movement lifestyle, and the longer you live, the more time you have to set movement patterns that might require your body to compensate. So you see, it's not that I am getting older, I am falling apart. No, it's just that you've lived long enough that you've had more time to concretize movement patterns that you just need to alter, and then you can have some relief.
Okay, thanks. That's very helpful. I'm happy to keep going because this is so interesting, but just so you know, we've been going for close to an hour and a half for now. On that topic, by the way, on the diet failing and supplements, like I'm sure you'd agree that most of our cells are pretty depleted and that the nutrition in our fruits aren't as good as maybe they used to, and that's often the justification for supplementation. Do you feel pretty confident that with your fruits you get what you need, even though, especially living in a city and not having your own garden, you're like buying fruits that might be not as nutritional, and also that got harvested when they weren't as ripe and took some time to come to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a difference. I mean, you go, okay, I'll tell you a story. This is really funny, and I probably want to make a video of this, but a couple of days ago, I was staying in a hotel. I had to travel out of town for work, right, on a film, and so I'm in the middle of the urban city, okay, in a hotel, and in the middle of the hotel, there's like kind of like an open courtyard, right, where it's just open to the air, and there's park benches, it's grass, trees and whatnot. It's quite lovely. So I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna just run around out there for a while, take off the shoes and just romp around in the backyard. So I get to the backyard, and lo and behold, in the middle of the densely populated urban city, there's this beautiful apple tree. Beautiful apple tree. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what is this thing doing here? It was amazing. Densely populated with apples, and just I'm like, oh my, thank you God, I'm like picking all these apples. Anyway, okay. So even in the urban environment, right, you can still find just naturally growing trees that are giving you wonderful fruit that you would imagine is of fairly very high quality, right? Now, most everything we eat is not like that, of course. Most of the fruit we're eating here is imports, and then whatever we can grow here in Canada. But is it enough? Is it enough? Is it sufficient to sustain yourself on, right, without supplementation, and given, like you said, the soil depletion and whatnot? And I would have to say yes. I would say that with soil, right, when it comes to soil depletion, it might not necessarily be that the individual fruits, right, or individual crops are depleted themselves, but you might just find that a tree or a bush might produce less of the fruit, right, if the soils are not saturated with all the minerals that they might want. So you might find less being produced, but you might not excuse me, but you might not find fruit that is just so devitalized that it's not going to sustain you. because nature isn't going to want to produce fruit that is going to hurt the organism. It's not going to want to do that. If the tree is detecting that it's got less resources to deal with, it'll just produce less fruit, but not necessarily fruit that is of impaired, you know, foundational nourishment, right? It's so even though we have these issues, I don't think it prevents us from experiencing the fullest amount of health that we can. So it's as long as you're eating natural foods that do grow, right? And they're not GMO products. Okay, GMO, that's a totally different subject. Obviously, we don't want GMOs. But in terms of like soil depletion, it's not something that I'm too worried about. No, it's not something that I'm too. It's like the protein story where we had this whole protein myth idea get started up, the incomplete protein myth. Different foods have different amino acid concentrations, so you need to eat all the different types of protein in one day or in one meal, right? Now, it's not the case at all, of course, because you eat different things, and so you have that concentration satisfied just by virtue of eating. And I think it's much the same thing with this thing of soil depletion, right? You might run into a problem if all you ate was crab apples every day for your entire life from one particular area, from one particular bush. But nobody really eats like that. We're always eating from different soils, different places. So I would imagine that what is far more important, okay, far, far, far more important in determining the amount of vital health that you're experiencing is your abstinence from things that impair your health, from unnatural influences on your vital economy. That is the major factor that is going to detract from your health. If you can take care of that, then the vital principle that just runs through your body, that is going to take care of you for far more profoundly than any negative influence of soil on the quality of the fruit that you're eating, or vegetables you're eating, or the nuts and seeds that you're eating. Right? Does that make sense?
It does, and that almost opens the door for a more breatharian approach, where it's more about what you don't eat than about what you take in. And I would say that that was pretty good, really interesting on the soil depletion. I would still have doubts in terms of getting the nutrients, at least in its logic, when it comes to the timing also, because, and I don't know, I haven't verified it, but some people say, oh, spinach in 24 hours from the moment of harvest and the moment you eat it, it loses, I think it's 90% of its vitamin C or things like this.
I see.
Also with the time.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, it would be, it's one of those things where it's just like, it would be hard to imagine that whatever intelligent force is going about creating the type of food that we're supposed to be eating, if it were to be cursing you with having to make sure that the second it's picked, right? If you don't capitalize on that first 5 minutes when that apple is picked, you're ruining your health, right? It's a weird thing, right? At least in terms of fruit, right? Talking about fruit. Right? I think that what happens is fruits start to naturally break down and degrade, right? So the enzymes in the food, because they're alive, they start to degrade, right? There's a process that starts to go into motion once it's picked from the tree, for sure, right? That happens. So the longer you leave it, the more the food starts to turn into rot, and then by that time it's too late. So that process kicks into gear as soon as the fruit is picked. All right, that's true. Of course, we know that. But whether your body is is being impaired or hurt from eating food that is maybe 3 hours off the tree as opposed to 10 minutes? I'm not sure. I mean, it's hard to say, right? It's hard to say. It would be hard to imagine that there would be a huge impairment, not huge, even a minor impairment from just a difference in that capacity. Maybe if we're talking about fruit that's been left or that's been picked, and you're talking about 5 days later, 10 days later, yeah, maybe, yeah, for sure. There's a difference. Like a fresh picked apple from the tree, it's night and day difference than an apple from the grocery store, for sure. Like we all know that. So there's definitely validity to what you're saying, right? Absolutely. You couldn't deny that. And I think the closer we get to having fresh food right from the tree, right from the crops, I think the closer you get to that, yeah, you're gonna experience better vitality, for sure, for sure. But can you still capitalize on getting that sheer brunt of vitality just from eating conventional grocery store produce? I think so, yes, because again, it's the internal life principle that is locked inside of you that's more responsible for doing that. It's just hoping that you don't poison yourself actively on the other side, and then that starts to take care of you. So as long as you're doing the bare minimum on the outside, then the internal principle is really at the helm of what is preserving your vitality, in my opinion. Oh gosh, yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, like this. It was only at the end of the day on this shift where they started using this like smoke or atmosphere. Like they didn't use it for the whole day, and everything was great. And then at the end of the day, I'm lying down on the ground, and then they come in with the atmosphere, and I'm like, oh crap, oh this stuff sucks. Oh my god, never become a stuntman, guys. Just a general health rule: just don't be a stuntman.
It's the same on planes as well. Because I was on an aeroplane yesterday, and I was basically water fasting, and like I was just aware of like the air quality and things like that.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't get ill or sick or anything like that.
Yeah.
I did feel it drying out my throat, and you
Yes.
don't feel like today. I definitely feel the effects of it. I don't feel like myself.
Yeah. It's like the gift and curse, right? The more health you cultivate, the more responsibility gets piled on you to be receptive to what your body flags as not appropriate conditions for you to entertain in your lifestyle. So yeah, you just have more responsibility piled on you. So it's great, but again, it's just that's what happens. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You're so much more sensitive. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the game. I guess that's the game we're all always playing. But it's good. I'd rather be playing this game than have no awareness of what's going on inside. Like that's way worse.
I wanted to kind of have a silly note because I as a kid, like watching your show, your Free Melon Society, I get a real kick when you talk about giraffes because I really love giraffes. So I just wanted to add that little bit in there.
That's awesome. Oh,
fascinating. Yeah.
Yes. They're so fascinating. Come on. Can you imagine being an ancient human being and you had no idea giraffes or something existed, and then one day you go out and you see a giraffe? You would be like, what is the thing?
It's like purple tongue, like just eats the tree,
I think
just like,
I think if if I was reincarnated, I think I'd be a giraffe. Quite a long neck.
Yeah. Oh, there's just, I mean, they're so beautiful. They're so elegant and so, like so gentle and massive. Like, so, you know, as a kid, I mean, how are you not fascinated with a giraffe? It's just like, oh my God. I'm very happy that you have the fascination as well. Oh, that's too funny. Yeah. Yeah, I know it's such a fascinating place that we're in here, right? What an amazing universe, what an amazing planet. You know, all these examples of life doing all these incredible things. It's just like, and stop and think about it. It's just like it's mind-blowing, right? It's such a wonderful thing to be alive, right? To be here and just seeing all these examples of life doing life things. It's like, you think about it, and it's just, yeah, it just blows your mind, right? It just blows your mind.
It's really interesting. I think it relates to the fruitarian path too, in terms of being amazed with less stimulation, right? Because now when we go and have a good fruit, we're amazed. And some people, if I give them like, it's boring. And for example, here when I make a salad, like if there's not the salt and the spices, the people I'm with, I'm in Germany at the moment, would find it a bit more boring. Well, for me, it's already super tasty. And with life, a lot of it is like this too, where a lot of people won't get excited if they don't, like, I don't know, race a car super fast or have cocaine or whatever. Well, the goal is also to get excited by watching a tree, for example. And so there's that similarity of in the diet we do of getting interested and excited without needing the high stimulation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's it's all the other things that starts to become more important, or not more important, but just captivate your interest a bit more than the baser stimulations, right? And that starts to happen, and it's such an interesting shift to be awed by the simplicity of just a couple of grapes, right? As opposed to everything else that we used to imagine was necessary in our lifestyle. And seeing that shift, it's a beautiful thing. Your body and your mind recognize what is truly goodness. The simple, beautiful shape of a grape. Like, of course, like what could, like, it's circular. Like, what could be more perfect, right? Yeah, no chef is going to replicate the beauty and simplicity of like a grape, right? A dragon fruit. My goodness, right? Like, insane. Like, what chef could hope to come up with something as beautiful as that, right? And so I think when we start to be able to appreciate those things, when you're not being spoiled, when the senses aren't being spoiled by indulgences, it's only once they've stopped being spoiled where you can really start to appreciate what was gold to begin with, right? And yeah, like I would love that everyone have that by default, but you can't. You need to recognize that there is a problem at first, and you slowly make the changes, and then eventually someone has to be, they have to do it under their own power. It's hard for people like us to really tell others about it and have them believe us. It's really an internal process that once you do it for yourself, then it's like, oh, the lights come on and it dawns on you, like, oh my goodness, how was I missing this before? It's a beautiful thing. But yeah, it takes an effort. It takes will, of course. It's not an easy thing to go against the grain, right? It's not a super easy thing, but you do it not because you're depriving yourself, but because the glories on the other end are just so much more grand. My stunt buddy with the other day, like I brought a couple of oranges to work, and so at lunchtime I decided, like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna have something, and so I had some oranges there, and he was just looking at what I was eating. He's like, oh man, Martyr, don't you ever, like, come on, tell me the truth, Martyr, don't you ever like the pizza? I mean, do you miss it? Like, we just had Thanksgiving. What you were sitting at the table. You didn't have any desire to have any of the stuff, and I'm thinking, I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. It's not that I'm depriving myself. I'm not missing out on the other stuff. It's just that I am actively choosing something that is so much more constructive and better and makes me feel better and tasty and wonderful. I'm actively choosing that over being lied to. Like I'm choosing not to be lied to. Right? I'd rather have the truth told to me, and I'm saying that as a metaphor for eating what's proper and what doesn't lie to you, right? Whereas other conventional processed foods, like these are tricks. They lie to your senses and give you the wrong idea of what they really are. So it's like I'm choosing against that for a very particular reason. And so he's like, yeah, I kind of get it. Like you're not being deprived. You're just happily choosing otherwise. It's like, yes, right? I happily choose not to drink gasoline because it kills you, right? Like I wouldn't want to do that. That type of thing. Anyway, sorry, I'm kind of just excitedly going on about this type of thing. So please excuse me. It's like talking. But it's just a wonderful thing to be part of a lifestyle like this, and to feel the ease and the burden the ease and the release of burden that it affords your lifestyle. Is just like, oh God, I really wish everybody could experience this. And
it's making my mouth water now just thinking about it.
yeah. Like, man, like a papaya.
It's so funny you said that. Yeah, I'm just about to try one for the first time.
Oh, really? Oh, good for you. Yeah, good for you. Good.
Mexican papaya. Hopefully they're nice.
Yeah, wonderful. And there's so many, and the good thing is, even when you want to be a bit more gourmet, right? Like even when we want to just have some fun, you can, and you can make okay, so I tried making, do you guys know haricot? It's like this it's a traditional Jewish meal for Passover. And what it is it's apples and, well, there's lots of ways to prepare it. Usually involves wine and all this kind of stuff. Okay, ignoring all that. The base ingredients would be apples and some sort of nut, like a walnut or something. So apples, walnuts, and maybe something like a sweetener, like some sort of dried fruit. You just mix it together. That's what haricot is typically. I had never tried that, and I was like, oh, okay, I wonder, this might be something that would be really nice for to have as a treat, but to bring to family occasions, like a good go-to as a dessert, right? So I tried making some, and it was just like, yeah, so simple, like so simple and so easy. I just used some dates, apples, and walnuts, and that's it. Right? It was like, so even with the barest and simplest ingredients, yeah, you can make really, really flavorful things that are going to excite your taste buds and the taste buds of other people who are still on conventional diets, right? So it's great. Like you really aren't deprived of anything doing this lifestyle. Like nothing. I feel spoiled, completely spoiled by this lifestyle.
Amazing. Maybe we can take one more question, and if there is, and then wrapping it up. That's been amazing. Thanks, Eli.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no worries at all. And thank you guys.
I'm out of questions for once.
Yeah. No, it's I'm always happy to answer questions and just generally chat about these kind of things. It's important, right? It's important to talk about this, to have the conversation going, to let people hear other people talking about this stuff. And yeah, it's so important. And it's helpful for us just to know that there are others in the world that are doing the same thing. So I'm very thankful.
Would you say, I've noticed that people who follow these diets, they do tend to have like I guess we're already kind of talking about, but this natural gratitude that develops for the simple things, I guess, and for God, like the wonder of creation, right? Because like you said, you look at a grape and you're just like, I could never do that. So
yeah. I mean, is it a coincidence? I mean, like, yeah, like, are you actually? Of course, it's not a coincidence that a lot of people in this lifestyle seem to be very gracious, very, very humble, very people, uh, very intelligent people. You find a lot of people that are doing this type of thing that, they're not given to the wild indulgences, the wild excesses. They're not, they're not into the substances as much, right? All these characteristics, right? These virtuous characteristics. You find that people that do this type of lifestyle, yeah, they tend to embody those more consistently than everybody else, right? And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's just a natural byproduct of what happens when you fundamentally make higher improvements to your well-being, to your functioning as a human individual, right? As an organism, right? You clean up aspects of your life, and harmony starts to express itself more and more in your thinking, in your feeling, and in your physicality, right? You can't. So of course that's what's going to happen, and it's so interesting to see that, right? To recognize that in people, right? That they tend to be just these really heartfelt, good, moral individuals, and they have a more holistic approach to diet. It's like, oh my God, of course, the two go hand in hand all the time. So nice to see. It's nice to see that consistency in nature, right? To see that there's some sort of principle that's acting in the background, right? That's connecting this commonality amongst all these people who have this general set of virtuous traits, right? It's like, it's nice to see that even though we might not be able to describe what it is, there's a recognition that there's something connecting everybody, and I think it's nice to see and nice to feel, even if we can't describe it, what it is.
well said.
Hey,
Yeah.
I actually have a last question that I really want to ask you, and
Yeah,
it's about the UFC. Let's talking about this. I feel people into a fruitarian lifestyle usually are like more chilled and peaceful, and not so much into watching violent movies and violence in general. But somehow I know you like UFC. I also surprised myself watching quite a bit of UFC. I know Casey from Vegetable Police. He also has a UFC kind of channel, and
nice.
and sometimes I'm wondering to myself, like, of course in the UFC I like also the strategy, and it's not just about violence, but I'm also not watching chess or something else that could involve strategy. There's still something quite violent about the UFC. So I think you like it too, right? Like, how do you explain that very generally peaceful people can enjoy watching something quite violent like that?
Yeah. I think, okay, if I'm psychoanalyzing myself, right, I think there's one aspect of it that is the basic kind of things that you would want as a human being in terms of survival, right? Like the base survival traits that you're looking for, right? Defending yourself is one of them. Finding food, finding shelter, okay, warmth, right? Just temperature, just being comfortable. The kind of the base survival things that you would do. When it comes to martial arts, I think what's happening there is there's an internal recognition of the value of being able to defend oneself against a threat, right? As just a survival mechanism.
Like, you can imagine people who want to jab you. dodging the
Yeah, well,
jabs.
oh yeah, well, in whatever capacity it is, right? Defending yourself against evil, a threat, something that is seeking to take away your freedom, right? To defend against that. I think there's an aspect of the human psyche that the self-defense sports tap into when they're attracting our attention by resonating with that aspect of what it means to be a human being, right? That fundamental desire for self-preservation, right? The preservation of self-instinct, right? Whether that means running away from I don't know, a tidal wave, or running away from a typhoon or hurricane, or defending yourself against someone trying to hurt you, right? So the preservation of self-instinct. So I think there's a part of us that is attracted to learning how to do that, right? Because it makes you more valuable to the tribe. If you know, we're social animals, we're social beings. And the ability to protect our loved ones is a very good thing to cultivate, right? And as much as martial arts requires a degree of force, right? So a utilization of force to exert against the force of evil, or whatever it is, right? Something that's an affront to you. I would say violence, not in UFC, okay? I'm talking about just in the world, right? Like just in a social setting, right? Not as much in UFC. But defending yourself, as much as it requires force, it doesn't require violence. Like, see, you would make a distinction between the two. So violence being the unnecessary, uncalled for application of force for some destructive end, right? Whereas a force is just a force, where you can use a force to repel an invading force, but only with enough to dispel it and neutralize, and that's it. Well, kind of like how your cell, right? Like your every cell in your body is equipped with this defensive capacity, where if there's some sort of foreign material, a waste product, a toxin, a poison, right, that gets introduced into the mix, the cell equipped with this defensive force is going to exert a repelling defensive force against that offense, but it's not going to violently attack itself. It's not going to go overboard. It's only going to use the amount of force necessary to suppress the offense, and then that's it. And then back to homeostasis. Okay. So anyway, tying this all in, this self-preservation instinct, it's baked into every cell in your body, and it's baked into our own natural instincts as well. So I think that when we see combatives on TV or whatever, I think there's a part of us that recognizes the value in defense, and maybe that helps to captivate our interest. So maybe there's that. Now, but does it have to mean that watching UFC is or combative sports, that's a cultural thing. If none of us grew up with that, we probably wouldn't care to watch people fighting each other. Right? So there's the whole cultural aspect as well. I grew up with that in my lifestyle, and being interested in the discipline and the martial arts aspect and the physicality associated, the physical training. It's all of that was really of interest to me, not necessarily hurting other people. I mean, like, when I grew up, I didn't want anything to do with competition. Never wanted competitions. Never wanted to fight anybody. I just liked the other aspect, right? The training and the discipline and the movement and all of that, and the confidence that it garners you, being able to know that you're going to be safe, right? Like that does a lot for your confidence as a person. So all of that is very, very, very good. And I think when I'm watching combatives on camera, what I'm doing is I'm appreciating the game, like you said, like the mentality associated with it, and it's also a learning experience. Right? It's also just picking up things, right? By watching, picking up techniques, right? Picking up new ways to go about maybe defending yourself, right? So there's always a process. There's always a learning process going on there. So maybe all of these things add to the enjoyment of watching combatives on camera. At the end of the day, in 1,000 years, 500 years maybe, I would imagine that we would get to the point where as collectives, we're not really enjoying combatives then in the future as much as we would now. I would think that on the path of human evolution, this is something that would start to fizzle out, realistically. You know what I mean? Like, in time, yeah.
I feel it might be the case for me too, and it's not about judging, but it feels like a slightly lower frequency to me, but that's how it is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna, at the end of the day, it's people fighting each other, right? So fighting is conflict, and it might have the wrong effect on some people, and so really, there are other ways that we could get our visual entertainment other than that, and of course I agree. Right? So I think in time, we'll definitely start to shift away from those things as being how we get our entertainment. Now, I should say, in my defense, when I say get our entertainment, I'm not doing these things the majority of the time. The vast majority of the time when I'm entertaining myself, it has nothing to do with it. It's I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm exercising, doing other things, right? So these are just things that I also don't mind doing, but in no way do they encompass the vast majority of the time when I'm just at home. So it's
yes,
it's
I
not
bet
all
with your stuntsman job and a very active YouTube channel, I was already surprised that you had a full-time job that was different. So you're definitely doing a lot. Thank you so much, Eli, and thank you. Now you've spent more than 2 hours with us. I think we're all very grateful for that.
no problem.
Yeah, and is there anything you want to share to close this Q&A?
Gosh, there's a bunch of funny things that it's always fun sharing stuff at work, and I want to share some stuff at work, but I'm thinking about like, oh frig, I can't actually mention quite yet. But it's always fun. I think part of the enjoyment of this is just living in the world, but you're not necessarily part of all of the cultural, the cultural contrivances and the cultural contraptions. It's fun to be able to stand apart from it and then kind of look in as an observer and just be like very, very comfortable in your space, knowing that, oh man, it's like I'm so happy that I'm not caught up with a lot of these things anymore. And I'm just gonna bite my tongue and say so many advantages to just doing what we're doing. And I hope that everybody continues to get the experiences and get the benefits and reap the benefits of doing this, practicing this lifestyle. And you're gonna be of inestimable value to yourselves and the world around you. And God bless you for it. So thank you for being with me today, having all of these wonderful subjects that we've kind of thrown around in our discussion. And yeah, hopefully we'll do it again at some point. So I appreciate the time, guys.
Thanks so much.
You.
Yeah.
Thank you.